Welcome back everybody to another video. In this video we are going to talk about wattages. Do you really need 200 watts? Is 60 watts enough? Does it really matter? The power ratings in your amplifier and your AVR, what really are the subtle differences in performance when it comes to real time, real life? But before we get to the crux of things, I just want to mention that as far as my cable management, I don't know what to do with it yet. I was thinking about getting a rack. I don't want to drill holes in my bookshelf because I swap equipment in and out and I rerun wires left and right. So that is why my cable management is crazy. So don't worry about that. Just let you guys know. It's something that I can live with. And plus on top of that, it's not a regular setup. So if it was, I would just put everything in a rack and call it a day. Now, for the AVR power ratings, just so you guys know, if you guys not aware, usually the way they advertise the power rating is with a 2-channel wattage, or sometimes they even put those in 4 ohms. What we are really focusing on as average consumers is we need all channels driven at 8 ohms, and that is the correct wattage that we are trying to get. So if you think you're running a certain amount of wattage, you might want to check your specs on all channels driven at 8 ohms. It might not be what you think. Now, I'm going to go over some subtle differences and then analyze if more power really matters. So we're going to start with 60 watts, all channels driven. And in this scenario, we are gonna use the config 5.2.4 just for reference. 60 watts will power your surrounds just fine. You get a good performance as long as you have decent speakers and decent subs. That's what most people have running in the AVRs. Even if you run separate, you can buy an amp that has 50 watts, all channels driven, and it'll do the job. The next wattage that our ears can and will tell the difference is 90 to 100 watts. Now, at 100 watts is where, in my opinion, is the threshold of power necessary to achieve a good sound performance. That should be the minimum wattage for your LCR. Anything lower, you can perhaps get away with it for your Atmos heights channels and your surround backs. Next, tellable wattage power, I would have to say 130 to 140 watts. You will be able to distinguish this power from 90 to 100 watts. Next wattage that you will definitely notice is 200 to 225 watts. And this is all the power you will ever need for an ultimate performance in home theater, in my opinion. So those are the wattages ranges that if you were to step up, you got to step up to at least those steps to be able to even tell the differences from wherever you begin. And then that way it's distinguishable between the power. Now, since 100 watts is what I consider to be the threshold of minimum power, does going from 100 watts, does going from 140 watts, does going from 140 watts to 225 watts make any difference? Yes, it actually makes a huge difference in sound performance with all the oasis of wattages in reserves. That being said, you really don't need that much wattage for surround sounds. 100 to 140 watts is plenty of performance power when it comes to home theater. And when I say home theater, I'm talking about the home theater that's for your living room space. It's I'm excluding the dedicated home theater, the home theater room dedicated big enough for theater seatings with 120-inch screens or above. I'm excluding that on a side note. Now, for those big rooms with theater seatings and steps and all that, with those 120-inch projector screens, when it comes to wattages, more power is more better. Now, for your living room's space, 225 watts is superb. Don't get me wrong, it is superb, especially for a 2-channel music listening. But 130 to 140 watts is all you ever need, in my opinion. So if you, let's say, do a 2-channel, just if you only use 2 channels all the time and you don't want to spend the dough, I would recommend 130 to 140 watts, and that's plenty of power if you're just going to run 2 channels. But if you're strictly running home theater and you don't want to waste the money, you got to get that minimum of 100 watts. So, of course, if money is no object, you should definitely buy 200 watts or more for your LCR, and everything else for the rest of your channels, 140, 150 watts, 130 watts will be suffice. So in summary, power of 100 watts minimum does matter to get a good performance. Above 200 watts only really matters for a 2-channel listening. On a side note, your processor, your AVR, and the amplifier brands will and may slightly differ the performance of sound coming when we're talking about wattage power. That's gonna wrap it up for this video, guys. Like, subscribe, keep it friendly. In the comments, how much power is enough for you? What are you actually running? Tell me all about it. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Hooded Dragons out.